needed to work on?
Is anything easy and easy to sell to executives?
Hello and welcome to episode 127 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is the marketing and the F is the well you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm no rockstar, but I've picked up a thing or two over the last 20 years on my tour from techie to CMO and trusted advisor, and each week I chat to the true rock stars, my fabulous guests and chums, and share with you some marketing street knowledge that I hope will inspire your inner rockstar. Come say hello. We are Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn, and proud members of the Marketing Podcast Network. This episode is recorded on Friday the 12th of August 2022. Thanks for joining us. Hope you've had a good week. You are well, safe, and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. On this week's episode, Jeff Clark is back in the marketing studio. I go backstage with Head of Marketing for Seurat Technologies, Joyce Yeung, and we wind down the week in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar with Robert Rose for a cocktail and a marketing thought. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
On to our first segment, the marketing studio with Jeff Clark. Jeff is a sought-after Rockstar CMO advisor and former Forrester Serious Decisions Research Director. This week, it's planning season. Welcome back, Jeff, to the Rockstar CMO studio with Jeff Clark. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Splendid. And I'm assuming that you are basking in some hot, humid weather, the same as us. Let's get that out of the way.
I think we sent the hot, humid weather over to you, and we have now had a day of cool weather. Not cool. It's only cool relative to the heat wave that we went through for probably 4 weeks. So anyway, we're getting some welcome relief. And we're even go down to New York City, and I'm looking at the weather in New York City, and it's not that bad. So, hey.
Splendid. Well, I mean, for people who are new listeners to the show, I'm speaking to you in Massachusetts, and I'm in the UK. And weather is our obsession.
It is our obsession. I check it every hour.
But something else, aside from weather, we are also obsessed with marketing, and particularly planning. We talk about planning quite a bit. And we're coming up to planning season, right?
Absolutely.
And I know that you've come across an article from your old crowd over at Forrester. Avoid 4 common mistakes that can derail your marketing strategy. Imagine that, making a mistake, saying the word mistake.
Yes.
By your old chum, Jennifer Ross, VP Research Director over there. And I picked it up as well, and I'll include a link to it in the show notes. So what do you say, Jeff? What do we need to look out for when we're derailing our strategy and planning?
Well, one of the things, as I remember, Jennifer used to lead a annual CMO study. So, what are you concerned about? What's driving your thinking for the next year? And it was just kind of interesting. It's like improving marketing strategy was like, the number 1 or 2 process or thing that they needed to fix in the coming year. And it's kind of like, well, I think that's on you, guy and gal, to fix it. So I don't know why you can keep thinking it's a problem. But I think the challenge for, many CMOs, you be one can identify with this is one, you got to be in sync with your executive team, and then you got to make sure your team is in sync with you and the colleagues and other functions that, particularly customer-facing functions like sales and product and services. So it is, I mean, it's a tough thing to make sure you do strategy and planning well. And they kind of operate on different levels to begin with, which makes it kind of confusing. So it's definitely something that continues to be a challenge for CMOs. Continues to be a challenge for CMOs finding their place within an organization, and what they're supposed to be doing for the business.
Right. So the point you were making there, I mean, presumably those are Forrester CMO surveys, right? That improving marketing strategy always rates number one or two. So what did you take out of this article that you think that our listeners need to pay attention to when approaching?
Well, one thing is you don't want to confuse strategy with planning. And then there's also what marketing strategy and planning, and then there is the business strategy and planning. And so just to take, to take those four things and separate them is, from strategy versus planning. I mean, strategy is your 2 to 3 year time horizon, could be longer for some organizations, but you're trying to go beyond the coming fiscal year, and you're trying to say, what are the investments I need to plan? What are the initiatives? What are the capabilities I'm trying to build? And you're really focused on, mid-range milestones and impacts. Are we shifting our revenue mix? Are we changing from new business to, working with existing customers? Are we trying to move our market position? Have we acquired some other organization and we're trying to fit that in to our product and services mix? So there's all these things that, it takes more than a year to work through. And so you want to lay that stuff out. And different from planning, which is typically I'm going to get a budget and I need to determine what I'm going to do with my staff, my budget, my resources, and all that over the next year. And I may have shorter term cycles like quarterly reviewing of that plan, but typically because, their companies run on fiscal years, even nonprofits run on fiscal years, is therefore you do it initially from an annual perspective, and then you work through it as you go through the year. So let's separate strategy and planning. Right. Strategy needs to inform your planning, because obviously if you're looking out 2 or 3 years, year one is the year for which you're planning for. So that's, it's important that, and then, go ahead.
Yeah. Is that a common thing that you see? Because I think it's a challenge, isn't it, for CMOs to be to be afforded not the time, but the headspace and everything to be thinking 2 to 3 years, right? So because increasingly our business are, as you say, annually led or even quarterly led from a financial perspective, and there's so much pressure, isn't it, on delivery in those kinds of timeframes. And also the much talked about CMO tenure, right? 2 or 3 years, right? So, but you're saying there that the CMO needs to engage with the executive team to understand what is that 2 to 3 year plan for the business entirety,
and how's marketing going to support
and develop a marketing strategy.
And I think the thing is that when you think about, so you're right that it's like it's difficult to do, but when you think about implementing using technology, hiring people and making them productive, changing processes. If you realize that you're inefficient in the way you conduct business, and now you need to, adopt Agile, change the marketing, or whatever those aspects are. I mean, those are going to take more than a year to play out. So again, not that you can't think about what am I going to do in year one, but I need to be thinking about, okay, once I do that, what happens in year two, what happens. And, I was involved a lot in marketing technology planning when I was at Serious Decisions and Forrester. And it's like always focus on what's your roadmap, because there's just things that you want to do, but it's like you can't do it all at once. And there are things you need to do in order to get to a point where, if you're trying to get digital, there's things you need to do in the interim to get there. So, you always need to be thinking in multi-years.
And the interesting thing there is that you have to be in an environment that thinks like that, right? Because you need to be engaged with the rest of the C-suite that's thinking the same way, right? Which is that, do you see a lot of did you see that when you were working with clients that some businesses are thinking in that 3-year time horizon, others really aren't, and therefore presumably their marketing needs to try and force that to happen.
And that's
how do you deal with that?
Well, I think that's where the CMO. So one of the things that a CMO can do is you've got potentially you've got the resources to understanding how customers are engaging with content, how the brand is evolving, how maybe you've got a team that's doing market research. So there's all kinds of things that the CMO should be able to bring to the table to say, we should be, we should be thinking about these things in terms of how the business is going to evolve, and basically staking a claim on the executive team that you can be the eyes and ears for what's happening out in front of the next couple of quarters, where sales is focused on hitting the numbers this quarter, next quarter, the one, et cetera, et cetera. But which actually,
I've heard that description actually, that marketing, we're kind of thinking in the future, whereas sales are really thinking in the present, right? In that, and I think that way,
a lot of that has to just do with the type of people that get attracted to working in marketing versus sales. I was never a quarter-to-quarter type person, so.
And so what else did you get from that?
I think that what we were just talking about kind of leads to another important aspect that Jennifer brought out, which is just you need to understand what the business needs from marketing. Marketing can't, if, as we were talking about, the CMO needs to advocate to have a place in helping build the corporate strategy. Well, when it comes to the marketing part of that, they can't just say, okay, we figured it out for the company. Now we're going to go off and do our thing. You need to work with, particularly the other customer-facing functions, and maybe even some of your support functions, to figure out how you're going to execute. So what are the business outcomes that marketing is signing up for? How does that relate to marketing's goals? Then make sure that the plan you're putting in place is the people you're working with in sales, et cetera, are on board with that. And one of the things, I know we did a podcast that was kind of talking about, creating kind of a consolidated plan, like put a plan on a page or something where you've got a document that is easy to communicate with your peers. So shopping that around and saying, okay, here's the objectives we're building our plan to. Here's the goals we're setting. Here's the marketing contribution. Here's the goals we're setting for ourselves. Here's how we're resourcing it. Actually, here's where we have dependencies on you to help us execute that, or you may have dependencies on us. So I think it's really important that the planning process just doesn't become the marketing leadership team goes into a room and cooks up a plan. It is a iterative process working with other functions you need to collaborate with
the other stakeholders. Is there a difference when you're talking about goals and outcomes there? What's the difference between the sort of goals and outcomes that you're going to define in your marketing strategy against your planning? So presumably your planning is going to be some of those more tactical needs, like revenue target, contribution to revenue targets, leads, traffic, whatever it is that we're measuring the success of our marketing on, awareness, that kind of stuff. Are the outcomes that you need to discuss with the C-suite when you're trying to define a strategy different from that? What sorts of things are we thinking about?
I think you're thinking about how marketing is building or evolving its capabilities. So and capabilities can be the people, the processes, the technology, the data you're leveraging or in creating. So those aspects of your capabilities are things where you could set milestones. And again, I was talking about doing a technology roadmap. Well, you could do a roadmap for your team, upskilling, hiring, et cetera. You could do a roadmap for how you're evolving your data, which might be incredibly important for providing insights to the organization. So all of those milestones, which are not as much, as you say, they're not as much kind of like revenue number driven or lead opportunity driven. They're more about milestones that are showing you're creating the capabilities that are going to support the business in the strategy that it's created for the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so this is almost like a strategy for marketing then. We're thinking about how we're going to evolve our marketing function, our team, our tools, and how we work then, as well as what it is that we're going to achieve in terms of contribution to the business with the marketing strategy.
Yes.
Right. And so are we, and on this, are we thinking more like OKRs and things like that, sort of objectives, key results, that kind of model in terms of, those higher level things that we need to achieve?
Yes. And, I think showing that and being able to review those with the executive team to show that the capabilities that you've set out to support the business strategy, they're in place. And not to get into the details, but where are we on our roadmap for building this organization, and then also being able to say, we're this is the tough part is we're executing on the short term goals of opportunity generation or brand improvement, et cetera, as well as building these capabilities. Again, which makes it complex and makes it easy for the executive team to look at the CMO and say, okay, you're not doing what we need. You're out of here. Right.
And then part of this, and I know because I had a look at the article as well that you shared, was about not just about how we interact with the C-suite in terms of getting synchronized with them and getting those common bonds in terms of strategy and goals and outcomes and stuff, but also about providing ongoing guidance to the marketing team. What's your thoughts on that?
That is absolutely necessary because again, part of what you're as the CMO you're trying to execute are the things that you're showing to the C-suite, but also there are internal orientations in terms of, are we changing our operating model? Are we evolving our capability? Are we hiring the people we need to be able to hire? Are we late on that? Are we meeting our internal milestones? And as well as the kind of the external view of, are we engaging our audience? Are we evolving our brand? Are we developing the market that we, in terms of, developing opportunities and pipeline? So those two things, or those two sets of things, kind of the market orientation, which is external, and the operational orientation. Absolutely important to continue to, communicate where we are with the marketing team so that they understand, we've set this, both the annual plan or maybe even shorter term plans, and when we've set a longer term plan in our strategy. So where are we on those? And, this is like anything that has to do with, change management or management in general, is like communication is just so important. And so, and I know I've had a number of CMO leaders that I work for who they did an excellent job of, we're going to get together every quarter and we're going to go over where we are in goals. We're going to go over, where we are on staff. We're going to reward people for, good work or great outcomes, and so that everybody feels like, we're on a mission together, and we're going to succeed.
Right. I think that's really interesting, the way you described it. It's a bit like what I was saying just now, isn't it? Is that we've got to define those two sides. We've got to have that external marketing strategy and that internal strategy for marketing, right? Is how are we going to improve our own marketing operations so we can deliver against those? It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, one of the things we talked about, last week was that, there was this people leaving marketing because they felt like have a lack of purpose. And of course, you could you could define a number of ways, but it's not necessarily that from an altruistic perspective. It's like, hey, I have a job. I was hired to do something. I want to feel that I'm contributing to something that's greater than just, I don't know, bringing people to a webinar or whatever my particular role is. And that works its way from the top down to the marketing leadership team, all the way down to every individual in the organization.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, that's great. And I'll include a link to that article in the show notes. I think you've done it more just, I mean, it was just 4 points, and it seems that you've elaborated on that, which is excellent. So that's Avoid 4 Common Mistakes That Can Derail Your Marketing Strategy by Jennifer Ross, VP Research Director, that you can find on the Forrester blog or in the show notes. I'll include a link to. And the final a part of the agenda, and I know we've had some fun with this one, Jeff. What's the song for this week?
There's so many to pick from, or so little, depending on your perspective. But we went with a remix of a classic by Moby, and it was funny because it was called "Planning to Rock" remix. Well, planning and we rock. So hey, what the heck? But the song is a remix of David Bowie's Heroes, which is just one of my all-time favorite Bowie songs. So, hey, let's go with it.
So that's, so this is quite complicated, isn't it? So it's Heroes by David Bowie that was done by Moby and then remixed by Planning to Rock. And I think the Planning to Rock bit was the bit that was most relevant to this article this week. Anyway, I'll play a bit of that.
Want the CMO and the marketing team in general, they want to be heroes.
Absolutely, to be and Planning to Rock. All right, so I'll play out with that, and that's actually from 2022, which is just amazing for us, Jeff. Well done, you. But will I see you in the marketing studio next week?
Absolutely.
Well, I'll see you then, my friend. Have a good one. Thank you, Jeff. And that was Moby's version of Heroes by David Bowie, remixed by Planning for Rock from 2022. Plenty of stuff from Jeff there that I'll be including in the show notes, and you can find those at rockstarcmo.com. Just click on the podcast link. Right, time to go backstage with my guest. As you'll hear, Joyce Yeung is the head of marketing for 3D printing startup Seurat Technologies. She enjoys partnering with high-growth companies and founders to build their audience and narrative. She is fascinated by the many ways startups can evolve into world changers and believes that people plus passion equals everything. Joyce provided a wonderfully short bio there, love that, but it's just a teaser for this serial startup marketer. Hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Joyce, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ian. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, you're more than welcome. And where are we speaking to you from?
I am based out of Dallas, Texas.
Wow. Now you get some warmth. I mean, they're talking about how hot it is here, but you guys, it's a bit hotter there, isn't it?
It is muy caliente.
Splendid. And for people that have not come across you, Joyce, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a content marketer, startup marketer in every way. I believe it is an honor and a privilege to help a founder build their business, which is why I'm so attracted to startups. There's nothing I love more than a good story, which is why I've chosen this path of content marketing, and excited to talk more about it with you.
Ah, splendid. Well, I'm delighted to have you. I've been looking forward to this because we did have a slight snafu, didn't we, the first time we tried to record it when somebody drilled through your internet connection. So it's good to have you on the show. Yeah. So you're let me get this right, Senior Director of Marketing at Seurat Technologies, correct?
Correct.
And what is it you guys do?
Seurat is a venture-backed hardware startup in the 3D printing space. So we have taken the 3D printing process and have scaled it such that it can compete with traditional manufacturing technologies and is actually capable of reshoring manufacturing to wherever the customer is. And that becomes really exciting because when we can reshore, we can bring back jobs, we can create local economic impact, we can really improve the local academic infrastructure, and there's just so much goodness that comes out of that.
Yeah. So is it the big machines that you create then, that you make, as well as the software and the stuff that goes around that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our business model is we make machines and we sell parts. So we're not trying to sell systems and having them installed at various customer sites. We're looking to sell high volume parts to customers.
Yeah, cool. And that's a big deal at the moment, isn't it? 3D printing, and they're making everything, aren't they? From houses to airplane parts. It's amazing.
You can certainly make a lot of things through 3D printing. Yeah.
Yeah. So aside from me promoting you to CMO, you've had a fabulous marketing career and obviously one to come. What inspired you in the first place to choose marketing?
I wish I had a glamorous story around that. I'm a first generation American. My family is Taiwanese. And so naturally, my family led me through down the path of accounting, finance, engineering, and the holy grail would have been if I became a doctor. And I did none of those things. I wasn't academically smart enough to do any of those things. Instead, I went down the business route. And what I found in sort of early college was that a lot of my friends would come to me with their sort of complex problems and word vomit. And after spending an hour listening to them, I would say, okay, I think I can help you synthesize your thoughts and put them and digest them into something concrete. And sort of, I guess, after years of doing that, I was like, I think I have a promising career in either psychology, counseling, or content marketing. And I went down the third route.
I think that's great. And I mean, I talk to marketers who've had all sorts of inspiration that's taken them into marketing, from being in the music industry to, some people have been techies turned marketers. But I think that idea there is that you understood that you could tell a story better than that's almost exactly what we do, isn't it? We tell the story around our products, or we tell somebody else's story better.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Taking a lot of disparate, complex thoughts, piecing them together into something cohesive is really the hallmark of content marketing. And I think a lot of, for anybody that's early career listening to this and you don't really know kind of which way to go in your career path, it may not be straightforward. Your soft skills might lead you there. And that's kind of what led me down that route.
Right. And how did it start for you? What was your first marketing role?
My first marketing role was, I worked for a small software company that they were a reseller of a much larger product. And they had about 8 people, and I was their first marketing hire. And then I jumped and landed at a telecom company, and I wasn't their first marketing hire, but I was one of their early marketing hires. And that was sort of the common thread through my career, being one of the early marketing hires and really helping shape the narrative, the whole marketing mix. And that's something that I really enjoy. Getting in early on and figuring things out has always been something that's so complex, so interesting, and really draws me in.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, because that is a common thread of your career from the research that I've done, is you've worked with a lot of startups, including your current role. And also you've been through IPOs, you've been purchased by a massive organization in GE. What is it about startups that attracts you? Why do you always start from there?
I think startups are trying to change the world because small dreams don't get funded. And so I'm really attracted to founders that dream big and have audacious goals. And I'm even more attracted to companies with a social mission.
Right.
So what attracted me to Seurat is it's not just a manufacturing company wanting to bring back business and create new jobs and create this wonderful economic impact. It's the byproduct of doing that is decarbonization. So if we can migrate manufacturing from the traditional dirty process that it is today to 3D printing, which is electrically driven, we have a fantastic opportunity to offset a lot of carbon and fossil fuels and really create a meaningful environmental impact for the world, because the climate crisis is real.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful tool for recruiting. That's a wonderful mission that I think a lot of people can get behind, versus we just want to make a lot of money for the company or come join us because we have an awesome beer keg and free pizza.
So you're obviously a proponent, and this is something that's attracted you to companies, both in terms of, them acquiring your talent, as well as helping you tell the story of that organization, is companies with a purpose. So do you think it's important that companies have a purpose?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now more than ever, because hasn't our world changed so much in the last 36 months? I mean, we went through a global pandemic. We've gone through we are going through a humanitarian crisis in Eastern Europe. We're going through a recession, and the whole recruiting angle has completely changed, because it went from this great, it went through this great depression of recruiting where we couldn't really find talent. And now there is a lot of talent because there's been so much tech layoffs.
Yeah.
And everybody wants something different now. I think everybody at least your A players are looking to join a mission, not just obtain an awesome 401k program. And so for marketers, I think our ability to really connect with people, to connect with candidates and give them a real reason why they should join and how they can make a meaningful impact and do the most meaningful work of their career is more important now than ever.
Yeah. And I picked up that, actually, and I was going to ask you about it later in the interview, but we might as well go right there now. I mean, that's what I saw. You were discussing this on LinkedIn, that you've shared your growth plans for Seurat. So I was going to ask you, how as marketers we can help? You've got this mission, haven't you, at Seurat? You need to bring a lot of people in. How do you think marketing can help? Is it telling that story about the company and about, what the why of what we're doing?
I think building that recruitment narrative is such an interesting thing. And to be honest, I've never had to do it until Seurat, but that's also because sort of our world has changed and the demands have changed.
Yeah.
And I think of it as twofold. So there's this psychological aspect to it where it's working one-on-one with your current employees and understanding why they decided to come here and can they be advocates for your brand.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that is the mobilization, which is broadcasting the advocacy across blogs and digital mediums and things like that.
Right.
And it's just so interesting because everybody is attracted to something different when you talk to them, but fundamentally they all want the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that fundamental thing is everybody wants inclusion. Everybody wants to make, they want to feel like they are doing meaningful work and that their work matters. And mobilizing that is honestly, I feel like it's such an honor.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So your view then, from how we as marketers can help with growing our companies from a recruitment standpoint, is that we mobilize our colleagues in order to talk about how good it is to work in this organization, right? And to tell their stories, right? It's almost like when you're trying to recruit customers, you use cases and customer testimonials, right? You're saying we need to take that just as seriously when it comes to acquiring talent.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the customer advocacy part, I think as marketers, we understand very well.
Yeah.
Customers are our best storytellers.
Yeah.
And now that our world has changed and, as a young startup, we're looking to grow by 10x in the next 3 years. We have another customer, which is the candidate.
Yeah.
And so I need to mobilize our existing employees, and I need to mobilize them in a way that's authentic and genuine and empower them. And like I said, it's very interesting. I love the work I do because it's so meaningful.
Yeah.
It's meaningful when you see other people, when you see your peers really light up and they feel like what they're doing is important. And it's just, it's cool to give them a platform to do that.
Yeah. And it's important. I mean, HR marketing or recruitment marketing or whatever we call that part of our daily life, as you say, often gets deprioritized as we so much focus on growth and awareness of our organizations. But without great people, you're not going to achieve any of those things, are you?
Yeah. And I think, the old way of thinking about recruitment marketing is that we always thought the benefits would speak for themselves.
Yep.
Right. If I pay you well and I give you, all these other benefits, aren't you happy?
Yeah.
And it turns out no, because I think our workforce is telling us, especially as the workforce gets younger, they're telling us that inclusion and diversity, diversity, equity, inclusion are more important now than ever.
Yeah. And I also liked what you were saying about that all employees like the same things, like to be valued, to be included and all that kind of stuff. And that's the story we need to tell is where do they fit into our organization and what does that look like for them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so back to talking about working for startups. What advice would, aside from being really good at recruitment and telling employee stories, what advice would you give to marketers who are looking to work with early stage companies or perhaps being offered opportunities at early stage companies?
Figure out why you want it. So it's very different to work for a high growth startup than it is to obviously work for a very mature established player. Everything about it is different. My daily role at Seurat is wildly different than my daily role at GE. And I think when you work for a young business that wants to do something big that's unproven and has a vast blue ocean in front of them, you have to have conviction. Conviction that your work matters, conviction that the company's mission matters. And it's that conviction that will get you through the really hard times, because hard times are guaranteed.
Right. And do you think there's a certain skill set you need when you're with early stage? Because obviously then you're kind of more of a generalist, aren't you? And you probably need to be quite bootstrappy, and you probably don't have the resources straight away in terms of agency help or bringing on a team. Do you think is that kind of entrepreneurial sense that a marketer needs for that?
Absolutely. Scrappy, being really creative. I always tell my team, I tell them we're in the lemonade business. Right? We have to make gallons and gallons of lemonade out of very few lemons. So doing more with less in a valuable way. All that stuff is necessary. Grit, you got to have that.
And what do you think? What's been the challenge for you guys from a startup perspective? Because you've got to do everything as a marketer. You've got to build awareness, haven't you, as well as building revenue, and sort of nobody's heard of you. And how do you build up the trust? So, where have you seen the biggest challenge? Is it building awareness within a startup, or is it, man, we got to get some revenue in the door? Where's it looked for you for that?
I think the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity for us is I joined Seurat when they were still in stealth mode.
Right.
And I've been here for less than a year, and since then we have come out of stealth mode. So the biggest challenge is building an audience. But then like I said, I think that's also the biggest opportunity, and that's really where content marketing thought leadership shines. So working with the trusted experts inside the business, formulating what our strategic narrative is, uncovering who the influencers are in our market, and educating them on what we do and getting them to broadcast it to their networks is a form of creativity and art and strategy altogether.
Yes, and I love the way that we've now led straight into the probably the topic I was putting off because I'm looking forward to it the most is because I'm crazy about content marketing. So when we were introduced, you were described not only as a startup marketer, which we've just covered, but you love content marketing. And I think we've just started dipping into them. Why do you think content marketing is important? I mean, you've just mentioned a couple of things there, but why would you apply that in whatever marketing role you were in?
Content is story, and story is strategy. It's so important. Content is fundamental to how we build our audience, to how we create differentiation, to how we battle the villain in our narrative. It's so important. And I think, I want to speak to the early career people if you're listening. And if you're wondering, hey, does my work really matter? If you're like an entry-level copywriter and you're wondering, is my work product good? Is my job important? It is important. And if you can connect the dots, and if you can help your manager connect the dots to how my copy is connecting to the larger narrative and how it's helping create differentiation and creating a category if that's your business's mission. You are connecting yourself to the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you found that to be an easy sell when you've been working with executives? Because it doesn't have the instant results of other techniques, but it's very important that you sort of make it clear to the audience who you are, where you sit in the category, what the category is that you're in, as you were just saying. But have you had that as an easy sell to executives, or is that something you've needed to work on?
Is anything easy to sell to executives? Oh, Ian.
I think the thing that's easy to sell is revenue, isn't it? I'm going to get you some revenue. I think that's about it.
By tomorrow morning, yes.
The leads are weak.
I think it's definitely something that requires patience. And I think, as marketers, it's absolutely our job to not just build the audience, but obviously build pipeline too. And it's so important that executives understand they go together.
Yeah, absolutely. And without content, what's your audience going to engage with? And without a story, right?
Content is the biggest, baddest tool that we have as marketers in our toolbox.
I think we should conclude on the content marketing with that content is the biggest, baddest tool. I think that's the perfect way to conclude that part. So I'm going to move on to our final question. We have a regular feature, the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool, where we throw all the bullshit, snake oil, and overhyped trend that plague this industry you love. What would you chuck into that pool?
If you are measuring your marketing success by the volume of MQLs that you bring in, you're a moron.
You just say what you think, Joyce. Don't
can I say that, Ian?
You certainly can.
I want to elaborate on that though, because I want to be constructive. So let me say it a different way. If you're putting the value of your marketing effectiveness based off of the number of unqualified leads you're bringing in, you can do better.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. What's your strategy? Where do you value your marketing and on what you do? Is it on the sales qualified leads? Is it on the revenue? Is it on the opportunities? Or is it something else?
I want to start by saying this. How I measure marketing has wildly changed over the years. And I've learned by working with different companies at very different stages of growth, that KPI changes. It's a dynamic thing. So how you measure marketing effectiveness as you come out of stealth mode as a young business is going to be very different than how a mature company like GE measures their marketing effectiveness. And as marketing leaders, we have to be smart about that. And so here's another word of caution that I always tend to remind myself about this too, is that we have to be dynamic and we have to change, and we cannot rinse and repeat. Because market dynamics change and the context that our business operates changes too. And so what looked good before, like maybe even just a year ago, may not look good now.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. I think we've got a couple of candidates for the pool there, haven't we? The MQLs and this rigidity with sticking to a plan, right? So I think both of those can go in the pool. So that was splendid. Thank you very much, Joyce. I really enjoyed that conversation. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, that would be the best place to find me.
That's excellent. And I will include all your links in the show notes, including to Seurat Technologies and the fascinating work you guys do with 3D printing. And enjoy the rest of your day, Joyce. And I look forward to speaking to you again.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joyce. Did she just say morons? Love that. Bit of passion around the swimming pool. I will, of course, include all of Joyce's links in the show notes, so please take a look at her work, reach out and say hello. Right, where better to be on a sweltering hot Friday evening than the Rockstar CMO virtual bar, where we wind down with my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory, for a cocktail and a marketing thought. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. Welcome to the what is going on in here this evening? It is crazed. It is just crazed with all kinds. I think there must be 400 chimpanzees typing on typewriters. So there's the loud din of the chimps, and then there's sort of the typewriter. Are you trying to construct Shakespeare or something in here?
I am. It's just, we're all about science in this bar, so we're just trying to prove some theories. And this week, This is the theory we're trying to prove. So,
Okay. And it's not they have computers, they have typewriters, like old typewriters. So I find it interesting that you've gone sort of offline with this whole thing, which is fascinating.
It's the classic way, and that's what keeps the bar cool, isn't it? That we've got the old typewriters. It's
That's true. That's true. It does make for a cooler experience. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, let's let them. What are they doing? Chimpanzeeing their typewriting, and once the din.
So I have a wonderful
down,
cocktail for us. Yes, I have a wonderful cocktail for us this evening. If we can hear ourselves above the din, it is what we're calling a rum and orange cocktail. I had sort of a real, sort of a hankering for Italian Amaro. And I know you like a good Amaro.
I do.
And so the Amaro Montenegro, it's really a digestive if more than anything else, and it's just it's just so lovely. Even on its own, it's a lovely, wonderful sort of end to a meal. But actually, I found that so it's summertime still, and thinking about rum drinks. And so I've sort of mixed these things together thinking they might go together well. This is a sweet drink, I will tell you right up front, given the fact that it's rum and Amaro. But you basically, you pour some, it's an ice over ice. You have your, regular, wonderful Jamaican rum, if you can get such a thing. And then there's, of course, probably, so if you figure it's 1.5 parts rum, you figure it's probably 1 part Amaro. So there you go. So it's a stiff drink as well. And then maybe, if you like, if you've got such a thing around, a little sweet vermouth, just to sort of put, over, maybe even just waving the bottle over the drink. And then a little grapefruit juice on top of that. And it's just absolutely spectacular. It is a sipping drink for sure. Not, this isn't the kind of drink that you're going to want to guzzle. This is a sipping drink, very lovely after a meal, and especially after an Italian meal, which is when I made it was after a pasta dish. And it was just absolutely wonderful.
That sounds splendid. And I think a couple of those, I'll definitely be seeing chimpanzees.
There you go.
In their thousands. Well, or
you may find the artistic work in one of them, as good as Shakespeare.
Well, I'm going to try and recreate that fine drink using the ingredients of my desktop bar, and I'm going to start with the most English of. Are people getting tired of that joke yet? I don't know. I'm going to start with the most English of rums. Some Hendrick's gin. Oh no, I'm going to start with some ice. Where's my ice?
Yeah, ice is probably a good place to start.
Yeah. So there's some ice, and then I'm going to slurp in some of my beautiful English rum made by Hendrick's and called gin. And then I haven't got any Amaro on my desk, and I haven't got any grapefruit juice or any ingredients other than the wonderful people at Fever Tree have blended cucumber, which is a bit like the English grapefruit, and some tonic water, which they've put into a bottle for me to sample with this here gin. Let me try this. Oh, that's delicious, Robert.
There you go.
I think this might be a bit more refreshing than yours is. I don't think I could quite guzzle your choice. And what did you call your drink?
This we just simply call the rum and orange cocktail. I mean, I don't really have anything very creative for it. Other than just to sort of say what it is. I mean, you could probably make it. I'm sure there's a wonderful way to say this in Italian that would make it just absolutely spectacular. Maybe sort of the Rum Amaro Montenegro, something like that. But
si, bella, yeah. Well, I don't care what it's called, mate, because I could drink one of these every week. I love it.
There you go.
So, where are we going to go and drink these fine drinks?
I think we have to go to Italy, don't we? I mean, we have to. I mean, I have had just the strongest urge for great Italian food. And so I'm thinking probably some great pasta, in Tuscany somewhere. So I'm thinking we're nestled into the Tuscan hills on some big estate where we're sipping these drinks. And there is a wonderful Italian grandmother making us pasta in the kitchen. We're watching the sunset over the hills there, and just sitting in Tuscany and enjoying ourselves.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Providing one could get a flight anywhere through an airport.
Exactly. That is the challenge these days, isn't it?
Completely
Yes.
put a downer on that, but that sounds amazing. I'm all in. I shut my eyes for a moment.
It's so funny. We get you get the beautiful Italian grandmother and in the Tuscan hills, but yeah, you got to go through Heathrow to get there. So yeah, that kind of spoils everything.
All right, so but we persevered, and that vision is amazing, which is why we have the virtual bar and take people to these places. What would conversation turn to after a couple of these lovely drinks?
Well, it's almost like something that we, I mean, I don't know how interesting this is to talk about while we've got the Tuscan sunset and these great drinks and pasta to eat, but what has been on my mind has been 2 client engagements that we've been working on, and they've both focused on technology. And, what has fascinated me about the entire evolution of marketing technology, and both you and I come from this background, so we've got decades of experience to lean back on.
Each
is how confusing, how hard, how useless in many cases marketing technology can really be in terms of its level of effort of helping us be better marketers. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, because the 2 clients could not have been more different. So one of them, very sophisticated technology stack. They've got a modern content management system that does personalization. They've got a modern digital asset management system. They've got like AI-driven writing assistants helping their editorial teams, and all of this amazing sort of super modern technology at their disposal. The second client is struggling. They have no real technology other than this patchwork of, they've got shared cloud storage, which is basically a file system for their digital asset management system. They still manage, I'm not even joking here, they do HTML snippets in the middle of Excel fields and then save it out as a comma delimited file and upload that to their CMS system, which then displays the content. So
I was a little bit sick in my mouth then.
Yeah, it's right. It's visions of interwoven dance through your head, I'm sure. And so all of that. They've got this ancient collaboration system that's still using Lotus Notes. And if anybody in your audience knows Lotus Notes, you already have rolled your eyes. If you don't know Lotus Notes, go ahead and roll your eyes, because that's how old it is. And so, but the interesting thing is that both teams are getting this same amount of work done. They're producing this same amount of content through very different processes, obviously. They're both, quote unquote, getting the job done. Like, nobody's falling down here. They're getting what they need to do done. They're about the same size team. And here's the punchline: they both feel like technology is not serving them well.
Right.
And that to me is just so fascinating, because if you said, well, the one that has the modern systems is probably using 20 to 30% of the capacity of their modern system, you'd be right. And if you said to the other, if the other one would just upgrade to modern systems, they would be exponentially more efficient and more effective in what they're trying to do, and you'd be right. All of that would be right, but it's not. And it's just such a common process where we all, as marketing, envision this sort of dream where technology is going to help us automate processes and create these insightful dashboards and magically deliver the right content to the right people at the right time on the right channel on the right device and all of that. But then we just don't. We just don't do that. And I saw this statistic, and I'm totally maybe making this statistic up because but even if it isn't true, it feels true, which is that marketers these days spend 30% of their waking time. In other words, 30% of all the time they spend thinking about work, either researching, implementing, or learning a new technology that's going to help them theoretically do all those things that we just talked about. And the one thing that we don't do is we don't ask why. And the reason all of this came up to me, the reason the whole idea sort of started to emerge when I was thinking about these two teams, because I hadn't really put it together before, but it was because I learned about both of them were learning, we're trying to deal with privacy. Yeah. And data privacy and all those things and how they were managing first-party data. And there was a solution that was out there that basically would help them automate all of the data access requests that they might get from GDPR. These are European companies, by the way. And both of them were thinking about the GDPR and how they might, automate the data access requests that they might get from consumers. And I had to ask the question, I said, well, what marketing strategies are you devising that you're anticipating so many data access requests that you feel like you're going to need to automate that? I mean, it's just so, in other words, at the surface, the technology sounds really neat. Oh, you're going to automate this whole process. Yeah, that sounds neat. Yeah. But why are we designing a process around that? Why are we designing a process around a cool technology feature, which is what we so often do? And, you and I have talked on the show before about CMS systems and, the interface design, for example, being personalized and configured to the point where you can literally limit one person in one department from seeing the big red publish button. And so you go to all this trouble to implement this personalized interface for this one person instead of just going, hey, Jack, don't push the big red publish button. Just tell him not to push the button instead of designing these processes and systems around the capabilities of technology. In any event, it brings me all the way back to how we select and decide whether we need new technology. And I found myself sending them both of these clients my colleague Kathy McKnight's 8 steps to acquiring technology. And I love the fact that in her 8 steps of acquiring technology, figuring out the RFP is step 7. You know what I mean?
Wow.
There's so much work to do before you actually, and the first step is actually deciding whether or not you need technology and what it really is supposed to be doing. So anyway, that's what's on my mind.
I love it. I love it. And it's amazing. I mean, marketing technology is such a recurring theme on this show. And the amount of marketing technology, marketing executives that I talk to, and the thing they want to throw in the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool? Marketing technology.
Right, exactly. Yay, more technology, said no marketing person ever. Right?
Yeah. And also, I mean, I agree with you as well. I might as well give Kathy a little horn toot there as well, because I think if you can point me to that, I'll put it in the show notes as well, because I think I might have sponsored Kathy to write a paper like that in a previous life as well, and that her advice is excellent around that stuff. And I love the fact that 7 is RFP. You know what I mean? The first 6 are, do you really want to do this?
That's right. That's exactly right. They are varying degrees of that exact question. It's like, are you sure? Yeah. No. Are you really sure? No. Are you really sure? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love the determination of your one client that's working with all that antiquated tech. I also thought when you said, if you've heard of Lotus Notes, it's time for your nap.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, you know what's so funny is that it's a little bit like, so that island that's off the coast of India. I think it's this. I think they call them the Sentinelese. They're this tribe that has been untouched by modern, society for 200 years or something. So they're still in hunter-gatherer mode, right? And they get about life just fine, right? It's true. These people, this company that I mentioned before with the Lotus Notes, they don't know. They're so heads down and focusing on their own work and what they need to get done. They just don't even realize how far behind they really are.
So were you like the early explorers? You were showing them working machines, and they were offering you all of their
you throw out, and that's the thing about marketing. I mean, we all do this in some varying degree.
Yeah.
Is to say, you show them that you say, well, what if you could just do this? And they go, really? That's possible? These things exist? And it's like, yeah, they do. They do exist. Technology's come a long way since editing HTML in the middle of a spreadsheet. It's really quite remarkable what you can do these days.
I think you found a lost tribe of marketers there.
Oh well, here's the second punchline, which is, there are plenty of people in your audience right now going, yeah, that's us. Yeah, I mean, let's put a finer point on it. Adobe still makes Dreamweaver. Okay, so
right, that's a good point.
There are people who still use Dreamweaver to manage their corporate website.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, I mean, if you're out there, listener, and this is your experience, my heart goes out to you.
That's right. That's right.
All right, mate. So that's splendid. So when you've got your chimpanzees typing, or if you're cranking through Lotus Notes, and you're producing something for the interwebs, where can people find that production?
Well, they can always look for our stuff, including, by the way, and we'll put this in the show notes. I will send you a link to Kathy's wonderful 8 steps of technology selection at contentadvisory.net.
That's splendid. And I strongly recommend that work as well. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, Sam?
They'll find me these days hanging out on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and would love to connect with each and every one of you. And I would mention our lovely little community, of course, which you are a member of as well. We have lots of wonderful discussions in there just like this at experienceadvisors.io. It's a little passion project, and we're having a lot of fun over there. So if you're in the business of creating customer experience and want to get over to experienceadvisors.io and apply to get in, then we'd love to have you in there.
Perfect. Yeah, it is a great community. And I forgot to actually have you mention it last week, but it's always in the show notes. So you can find it in the show notes in all the episodes, experienceadvisors.io. Thank you very much, mate. And of course, most importantly for me personally, as selfish as I am, will I find you in the bar next week?
Oh, you will always find me in the bar. Yes.
I look forward to it. Thank you, mate. Yeah. Thank you, Robert. We definitely have a love-hate relationship with Martech on this show. So that's a wrap on episode 127 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. Thanks again to Jeff, Joyce and Robert for sharing their insight. Please say hello to them. I'll include all their links in the show notes, which you can find on your favourite podcast app or at rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find all our previous episodes. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. So, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? Please let us know on the socials, or drop a rating or review in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff is back in the marketing studio. I go backstage with Andrew Davis, CMO of Paddle, and Robert will be back in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Until then, have a great week, and I hope you again join us here next week on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.